Good evening, dear friends. My name is Irina Efros. I am founder of English and Action SPb project, which organizes different events in English who want to study and practice it in a fun ways. We organize different quests in museums and open-air quests in different areas. We organize education excursions, yacht trips, cooking classes with the foreign chefs, and online speaking clubs with the native speakers. And today I'm gonna organize a seminar for you on the topic London stories, and we will talk about different areas and different districts of London, and later I will tell you about my favorite ones as well. So let's try to share a presentation. I will try to share a presentation with you. Okay, it's working now. So this is information about me. This is the aspects we're gonna discuss today. During this webinar, we will learn what is a borough, how many boroughs are in London, why London districts are divided by nationalities, and 3 super interesting districts that not every tourist knows, actually. Not every tourist knows. Let's put it here. So, what is a borough, first of all? A borough is an administrative division in various English-speaking countries. In principle, the term borough means a self-governing walled town, although in practice, official use of the term varies widely. The London boroughs are the 32 local authority districts that make up Greater London. Each is governed by a London Borough Council. The present London boroughs were all created at the same time as Greater London on April 1st, 1965 by the London Government Act 1963 and are a type of local government district. So basically it's not an area, it's not a district, it's not a quarter, it's a few districts that live their own life and has their own like governing organization. London boroughs. Here on the right hand side you can see the map of London boroughs. There are 12 inner London boroughs, which are Camden, Greenwich, Hackney, Hammersmith and Fulham, Islington, Kensington, Chelsea, Lambeth, Lewisham, Southwark, Tower Hamlets, Wandsworth and Westminster. Everyone knows Westminster. And the other 20 are outer London boroughs, and the City of London is not classed as a London borough at all. Many former boroughs, for example, Finsbury and St. Pancras, disappeared overnight, though you can still see their names on old street signs around town. The new bigger boroughs needed new names. In most cases, ancient appellations were chosen, so here is a short guide to the etymology of London boroughs. Find out which areas are named after sheep, chalk, crocuses, and a hill in Yorkshire. So, etymology of few London boroughs. Brent, the most ancient borough name of all. Brent predates the Anglo-Saxons and even the Romans, and comes from a Celtic word meaning holy one or high place. A river of the same name still flows through the borough. It is one of only a handful of pre-Roman names still in use in the London area, along with Penge, Thames, and London itself. Famous places in Brent, you can see on the right-hand side, Wembley Stadium, which I think many people know, Wembley Market and Hindu Temple, you can see on the left-hand side. There are a lot of Hindu temples like that across UK, usually because India was a colony of Great Britain. The Indian government, they kind of gave as a present to some to few UK cities these beautiful Hindu temples. For example, there is a very beautiful Hindu temple in Brighton. Croydon. The borough and its largest conurbation take their names from the Anglo-Saxon phrase Croes Dianas and later Croydon, which, contrary to Croydon's current appearance, meant Valley of Crocuses, Valley of the Crocuses. The valley was no doubt a center of crocus cultivation, yielding saffron. Famous places there, Croydon Minster, like Westminster, but not that beautiful one, Croydon Minster, and Eddington Hills. Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea, one of the most posh and wealthy area in London. All the beautiful shopping malls, beautiful buildings are there. So Kensington's yet another place named after an otherwise forgotten Saxon chappie, this time Mr. Senesige or Kenesing. Chelsea is a bit more interesting, with a various ancient spelling along the lines of Chelsea, meaning the landing place or wharf for chalk. Chalk would have been used in fertilizer. Chalk means uголь. Famous places here are Harrods, Kensington Gardens, and many, many more. For example, beautiful museum of the first architect, official architect of London, for example. They have a lot of small, beautiful private museums in Kensington. Kensington is considered to be the area where people with old money live. Old money, you know, novorish, people with the new money, businessmen. People with old money are the people who got their money and houses from their ancestors. This is the money the ancestors made during few centuries, and many people try to get this status and to be around people with the old money, because it shows status, it's aristocracy, and it shows kind of the stability. City of Westminster. The name relates to the famous abbey, Minster, being Old English for a church. The west part simply denotes it as a west of the ancient city and its great church of St. Paul. In Anglo-Saxon and early Norman times, the area was known as Tornea or Tourney Island, for an islet of that character, upon which the abbey and palace of Westminster are built. Famous places here: Big Ben, Westminster Abbey, London Eye, you can see here Колесо обозрения, Piccadilly Street, and all the shopping area, famous shopping area. Royal Borough of Kingston upon Thames. Kingston was an ancient seat of kings, recorded as Sinninges, tune in 8038. The name means king's manor of estate or estate. Several 20th century kings were crowned here, as still remembered in the area's coronation stone near the Kingston Guildhall. Famous places here: Ancient Market, a very beautiful one, you can see on the left-hand side here, and Out of Order by David Mach. This is an installation of old telephone cabins on the left-hand side, in the low level as well. The Royal Borough of Greenwich. London's newest royal borough also has Anglo-Saxon origins, stemming from Greenwich, the green place on the bay, which it still is. Famous places here: Greenwich National Marine Museum, Cutty's Ark. This is a huge ship you can see on the photo that is now anchored in Greenwich, and that shipped goods from India, mainly teas, pastry, some fruits, later some coffee, etc., etc. And famous Greenwich Market. You can see on the right-hand side, in the lower level. And actually, the markets we know now, where you can try different cuisines, different cultures and countries, this tradition came from Europe and from UK. For many, many years, they already do that. For example, French people come to the markets to bring their sausages, to bring their ham, their famous cheese, their wine. Greeks come with the tomatoes, pickled tomatoes, for example, and with their wonderful pastry, baklava, olives, of course, olive oil, and they come to trade during the weekend, and then they are going back to their country during the weekdays. So another aspect, why and how London is divided by nationalities. We all know that in big cities like New York or London, there are Chinatowns and the Black Districts. And we know where to go if you want to try crispy duck or sweet and sour chicken, and what area to avoid if you don't want to be hit in the eye. Haha. But Not everyone knows that almost every district of the city is inhabited by certain nationalities. For example, Edgware Road is a place where Arabs live. Significant migration from Arab countries to the UK began in the 1940s, mostly by Egyptians. Other waves followed, such as Lebanese fleeing the civil war. The center of London has a thriving Arab community centered around Edgware Road. Southwark, Lambeth, Newham, Hackney, Haringey, Lewisham, Merton, Waltham, besides Nigerians, Ghanaians are one of the largest Black African groups in London, and they all live in these areas. Manor House, Wood Green, Haringey, Palmer's Green, basically it's an areas that are situated very closely to each other. They're inhabited by Greeks, mainly Greeks and Turks from Cyprus. According to the History of London, Greek Community by Jonathan Harris, the Greek population of London numbered several thousand by 1870s AD, whereas in 1850s AD it was just a few hundred. Many Greek Cypriots reside in, the latter harboring the largest community of Greek Cypriots outside Cyprus, resulting in these areas bearing local nicknames, whereby the green is replaced by Greek, as in Greek lanes and Palmer's Greek instead of green lanes and Palmer's Green. And the funny thing is, usually Turks and Greeks from Cyprus, they dislike each other, and they were put in the same area. So I was living in this area, and there was a huge conflict between the woman I was renting a room from and her neighbor from Turkish part of the Cyprus. But London government, they decided like that. Meldon, Koreans. So it's quite far from the center of the city. It's called Small Korea. And as of 2014, there were about 10,000 ethnic Koreans in New Malden proper. And as of the same year, the Korean population in the area around New Malden is around 20,000 already, including about 600 originating from North Korea, giving it the largest group of North Koreans in Europe. Many of the Koreans living in New Malden work for Korean companies, and they are either permanently settled and formerly expatriates, or they are still expatriates. The New Malden, Malden area has Korean language churches and nursery schools, as well as restaurants and shops with Korean clientele. The original embassy of South Korea to the United Kingdom is in Malden. Golders Green and Stamford Hill, there are two religious Jewish communities. So Stamford Hill usually is considered to be an area for Orthodox, super Orthodox Jews, quite poor. Golders Green, on the other hand, is an area for wealthy families. They have very beautiful houses there, nice parks, and beautiful synagogue, etc., etc. But about maybe 18 years ago, Golders Green invaded Polish people, which religious Jews really don't like. But again, as with the manor house, with the Turks and the Greeks from Cyprus, the situation is like that. A huge contrast inside the area. After the First World War, a large number of Jewish families began moving into the new housing from the crowded East End, and synagogues were built to serve the community. Immigrant Jews feeling Nazi persecution augmented the settlement during the 1930s. Now they have kosher cafes, shops, few synagogues, park, Jewish schools, and educational centers. Everything is closed during Shabbat. So Jamaicans. There are records that show Black people, predominantly from Jamaica, living in London during the 17th and 18th centuries. But it was not until the arrival of the HMT Empire wine rush on June 22nd, 1948, that significant numbers of Caribbeans, in particular Jamaicans, arrived in the capital. This has since become an important landmark in the history of modern multicultural Britain. During the post-World War II era, the presence of these immigrants were requested to help reconstruct the British economy. Employees such as British Rail and the NHS, this is National Health Service, and London Transport recruited almost exclusively from Jamaica. Some 250,000 Londoners are of Jamaican origin. And they have beautiful Jamaican festival right in the center of London, which is attended by people of all nationalities, and there are huge crowds and music, dancing, food, a very interesting show every year. So Russians, where do Russians live? Usually it's Kensington, Chelsea area around Regent's Park and Notting Hill. Estimates published by The Guardian suggest that the resident population of London, born in Russia, was over 150,000 in 2014. The rise in population has led to jocular nicknames for London, such as Londongrad, maybe you've seen this movie Londongrad, and Moscow on the Thames. And you can see beautiful houses there, you can see ladies in front of Gucci outlet, and you can see how Russians celebrate Easter in London. Of course, when I was doing a live seminar this week, I was asked if people from other nationalities can go to another areas. Of course, they can go. Like Jewish people can go to Koreans, and Jamaicans can go to, I don't know, to Greek people or somewhere else. But historically, they already formed these districts, and it's much more convenient for them, for each nationality, to live with their community, where they have schools, where they have their churches or synagogues or mosques. They have their friendly community and the shops and everything they want and they need, and they feel more in their country. Because London, it absorbs many cultures and many traditions, and it doesn't like push people to change their traditions because they're living in UK. It doesn't push to people to adapt to new country. Other nationalities, they still live like they're living in their country, but in London. That's how you can see many countries, like small ones, small examples of the countries, like copies inside one city. And of course, there are situations when other nationalities, they live in other areas or they marry people of other nationalities. It's totally okay, but majority of people, they still stick to their community and their traditions. So, and now we're gonna talk about the third aspect of my seminar, 3 most interesting areas in London. Of course, they're much more than 3, but first of all, we don't have much time. And the other thing that this is my favorite districts. So that's why I'm gonna introduce them to you today. First is Bangla City, so-called, or Brick Lane. It's a street in the East End of London, in the borough of Tower Hamlets. Today, it is the heart of the city's Bangladeshi community and is known to some as Bangla Town. It is famous for its many curry houses. In the 20th century, the Brick Lane area was important in the second wave of development of Anglo-Indian cuisine, as families from countries such as Bangladesh, mainly the greater Soavtor region, migrated to London to look for work. Bengalis in the United Kingdom settled in the big cities with industrial employment. Humble beginnings such as this gave rise to Brick Lane as the famous curry capital of the UK. So British people think that curry and chicken tikka masala is their national dish. Every Londoner has his or her own famous and loved restaurant or cafe, and they attend it with their family, with their friends every single week. So it's like a family and friend tradition to go to Indian cafe or restaurant every week. And most of the people who live in London, they go to Brick Lane and they have the famous favorite place, food place there. on the Brick Lane. Brick Lane runs from Bethnal Green and through the Spitalfields down towards Whitechapel. The street was originally called Whitechapel Lane. It is thought that it was renamed because local earth was used by brick and tile manufacturers who set up shops in the street in the 15th century. By the 17th century, the street had also become a popular location for breweries. The famous brewing family, the Trumans, started their business here, and you can still see their Black Eagle Brewery on the street. This century also saw the start of its market. Like much of the East End, the area was a haven for immigrants moving into London to escape persecution abroad or looking for a better life. During the 19th and 20th century, it was best known for its Irish and Jewish population. So at first it was a Jewish area, then Jews sold this area to Bengalis, people from Bangladesh, and they moved to Golders Green because it's further from the center, more eco-friendly, more green, better, more safe, better air, not that polluted, not that busy, etc., etc. And Bengali people, they asked the government to give them the official name, Bangla City, and it got confirmed. So when you're coming to Bangla City, you're seeing poster, welcome to Bangla City, and it's official. You are now in Bangla City. But Brick Lane is also famous for its art galleries, very unusual ones, clubs, but this clubs is not like posh in the, in Kensington or Notting Hill. It's more about drugs, it's more about alcohol and techno music and things like that. And Sunday market. Sunday market, London people, they love to sell and buy vintage, so you will find different vintage outfits, luggages, vintage books, and so on and so forth. And also you can try cuisine of different countries. Another area that I adore is Camden Town. For half a century, Camden Town, the center of Camden, has been the center of alternative culture in London. Be it punk, goth, hippie, or emo, and now it's, of course, hipster area. The area is home to large markets selling an extremely wide range of products, from glowing t-shirts to didgeridoos, mostly from independent stalls. With some of the capital's most varied cuisine, great live music, and an anything-goes attitude, Camden is one of the most vibrant and interesting of all London districts. The area has its origins in the early 19th century as a suburban town on the road leading north from London. Later, it developed as a service center around the railways, canals, and other transportation. Virtually the whole of Camden was traditionally working class inner city area with large estates of rundown public housing and some very seedy areas indeed. Inevitably, though given the convenient inner London location, considerable gentrification has occurred across the district. Nevertheless, a friendly community atmosphere remains in the area, which has in recent years bred such different people as singer Amy Winehouse and Labour Party leader Ed Miliband. So you can see this area. Mainly, it consists of 2- and 3-storied buildings, not the very high ones, and the amazingly beautiful decoration on the houses you can see. All houses have different colors, and they usually show what this house has inside. Either it's a piercing and tattoo studio, a shoe shop, or a vintage shop. You will see it from the outside because they have these beautiful decorations. Famous club stables, but I think now it's closed. Here you can see shops, the entrance to the Camden Market, one of the most famous markets in London, Brick Lane Market and Camden Market. Here you can see Roundhouse. It's a very famous concert hall, which exists for many, many decades, and it organizes concerts for the most famous musicians and singers, and not only musicians and singers, but also for the theater performances from UK and from abroad. They also have a beautiful canal, and you can go, you can like enter the Camden town and Camden Market on the small ship, and you will see open air zoo from the water, which is amazingly beautiful. And the last thing for today is Canary Wharf. So Canary Wharf is the secondary central business district of London on the Isle of Dogs. Along with the City of London, it is one of the main financial centers of the United Kingdom and the world, containing many of their tallest buildings, including the third tallest in the UK, 1 Canada Square. Canary Wharf is 97 acres, 139 hectares, and contains ground of 16 million square feet of office and retail space. It comprises many open areas, including Canada Square, Cabot Square, and West Ferry Circus. West India Dock Company. From the 1802 to the late 1980s, what would become the Canary Wharf estate was a part of the Isle of Dogs, Limehouse and Poplar, and was one of the busiest docks in the world. But after the 1960s, the port industry began to decline, leading to all the docks being closed in 1980. West India Docks was primarily developed by Robert Milligan, who set up the West India Dock Company. And now you can see that this is a place for doing business as a Soho, but mainly even much busier and much more developed than Soho. For living, they have a lot of wonderful living areas and parks and living houses and shopping. On the right hand side, you can see beautiful modern Tube. Tube is like a metro station underground. Most of the buildings are skyscrapers, but the air is very nice, not that polluted, because they have a canal and the Thames is not far. It's very close to the place. And they have a lot of green spaces and parks. And you can find anything there. You can find the places with the ducks and foxes and different birds and very quiet ones where people do barbecues on the weekends. You can find the most developed all brick and stained glass buildings, and you can see thousands and thousands of office people passing by, and you can find different restaurants, very posh ones, and clubs, and at the same time market with the open air markets with food from different countries on the weekends, and different interesting areas with the cars and wagons from where people are selling food. So it's an interesting, really interesting place. And docks, they also they didn't demolish, they didn't ruin docks, they just renovated these docks, and they put their restaurants and other places for locals and for tourists. And you can also see ships which are anchored right on the canal, right in front of the skyscrapers, which is astonishing, I should say, amazing. So hopefully you liked my webinar. Thank you for attention. You can see my project, you can find my project in social media. You can join our online club with native speakers, and please come to our live seminar in British Book Center next month.